Hello and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke, and today we're reviewing and reacting to the entire book of Project Hail Mary, written by Andy Weir. You all know the story. I watched the trailer, did a trailer reaction on this channel, saw that there was a lot of people who really liked the book. I went out and bought the book and did chapter by chapter reactions to each one. So I'm here to talk about my full review. If you like this content and if you want to support the channel and you want to buy the book, you can do all three of those things by going down to the description to this video and selecting the Amazon link and purchasing this book. And you can follow along on the playlist from chapters 1 through 30. It's just me chatting with you all about what happens in the book. But let's get back to this review. So I'm just going to talk about the things that I really liked about this book and the things that I didn't like about this book. Granted, there are so many things I liked about this book and a few little tiny things that I didn't much like about the book. Some of them you already know if you followed along. So here's the things that I liked about this book. To start with, Ryland's journey from where he begins to where he ends, in terms of his personality and his location, is unique, it's interesting, and it really explores the human condition without massive Shakespeare tropes. And what I mean to say is I am a little bit oversaturated right now with Shakespeare tropes, with people who have mommy and daddy issues, with goofy romance and goofy comedy. This doesn't share that same narrative. I enjoy this. And I also like that Ryland begins as a school teacher and then he becomes a savior of 2 planets, sacrificing himself, unknowingly surviving, and living his life out, the rest of his life out, as we know so far, sequel ideas coming, in a different place. You don't think it's going to end the way it ends. And I think that's really cool. Other thing I like about the book itself is how human Ryland is. He's scared. He's nervous. He's anxious. He's courageous sometimes. He's thoughtful. Actually, he's extremely thoughtful. He's bright. And he's brilliant. And he's got empathy. It's so unique in a main character to be bright, brilliant, thoughtful, empathy. He also is kind of a wimp. Not a massive wimp. A wimp like anybody is a wimp. He's had this massive ordeal being thrust upon him. And he's having to use his brain that's so accustomed to being treated a specific way and treating other people a specific way. And now it's a full-on, actually world-ending catastrophe that he is the only one on the planet that has the capacity to solve. Excellent storytelling, but still really cool. I like how the scope and the scale of what Ryland is doing, it fluctuates, but continues to grow, right? It doesn't just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and worse and worse and worse and worse, right? There are times to breathe, right? Ryland comes up with solutions for problems that don't escalate, right? It's not, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. It's, this happened, but this happened. But this happened. The cause and effect isn't always negative, and it's not always positive. But it is thoughtful, and it is how it kind of works out. It kept me on the edge of my seat. There were chapters where we needed to take a breath. I remember, I think, chapter 24. It's a massive, thank you. I needed that. Because some of the stuff that had been happening before was just crazy. The chapter where he kind of sort of figures out who he is and what he's doing, and he's had a few flashbacks. And then he suddenly noticed the alien ship. That's like, oh, we didn't think this was going to be an alien book. That's cool. It fluctuates. It's up and down. I liked the flashback and the present narrative storytelling. And that it all pays off closer to the end when you find out that it was intentional. It was specific. It was for him. I think that was really cool. Actually, I think it was really cool. Super well done. I've never seen that in storytelling personally. I don't read a lot, to be frank with you. This is the first book that I've finished in a little while, and I like that part of this story. That, oh, we're having flashbacks, but they're not like just manufactured. They're intentional. Very, very, very cool. Another really cool thing is the relationship that Rocky and Ryland build. It's simple to create conflict through different races and different types. It's something that humans have had to address the entirety of human civilization, right? It's a thing. If that doesn't look like me, I don't like it. It's just a thing. It happens right now with AI. When you see AI and you're like, oh, that's not human. Ugh. Uncanny Valley. I love their relationship. It's cool. It's heartwarming. It's interesting. It's entertaining. You'd think two people who were in that space at the same time would have the same kind of thought process. Not necessarily as much as they did. I'm talking about analytically. I'm talking about, oh, very cool. I loved Rocky's entire personality from beginning to end. Everything from how kind and empathetic he was. He's extremely thoughtful in his own way. And I liked how Rocky's personality and Ryland's personality sometimes didn't jive. But they overcame it because they had to. And because they both knew each other had each other's best interest at heart. Every decision that was being made, every action that was being done was in the best interest of both parties. Which is unique, I think, to Ryland. He's accustomed to people having motivations that are outside of his purview, that are different than his. And he is logical, but empathetic and emotional. And I like that Rocky shared that actual skill, that actual thought process, that made the story so heartfelt and awesome. And you could really focus on other things being the adversaries that they have to overcome, whether it's the sun, or the astrophage, or the Talmiba, or the travel, or explaining, or growing a communication database so they can actually communicate with each other. Very cool. I also liked how Rocky was built. It's unique. He's like a space squid, but made of rock. Or a space spider made of rock and metal. He hears through sound and sound waves. How scary would space be when you can't perceive anything outside of your own ship? I also like that Rocky handled adversity. Everyone else on his ship passed away. He had no idea why. He thought it was maybe his fault. Rocky's a cool character. I like the science and the pseudoscience. All but maybe one part was stuff that I immediately kind of understood from other sci-fi narratives that I had seen, whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, other items where space travel happens, there's gravity, there's matter. It fits into the realm of quasi nonfiction. It's still fiction, for sure, but it's quasi nonfiction. There's a few things I did have to be like, all right, how is the astrophage doing this? And then they explained it, and there was a few pages, and I'm like, okay, I have to read that twice. I have to Google some of these words. I need to make sure that I'm comprehending this. In the end, I did, thankfully. Thank you, Internet. But yeah, the science and pseudoscience, big plus here. A few times I was like, but for the most part, 99% of the time, really cool. I like the relationship Ryland had with the rest of the crew and the scientists back on Earth, and Strat, to be frank with you. It's so opposing to the relationship with Rocky, where she isn't empathetic. She can't be. She has reasons behind it, and she explains those reasons to Ryland, and Ryland thinks he can trust her. Can he? Probably. She's making the best decision she thinks she can make at any given time. But their relationship is great. Ryland's perceived relationship with the rest of the crew and the rest of the scientists is really good. And the way they set that up is excellent. Another thing that I liked, and I like this a lot, is that all of the things tied together. Ryland running out of food on the ship, famine on Earth. Rocky using sound sound waves and vibrations to be able to communicate and move and understand the universe, and Ryland using sight. The fact that they both sight and light, the fact that they both use these different things and they were still able to communicate and manage to be a part of each other's world, that's really cool. The way that everything kind of just tied into itself. And I'll finish with this. This is the last thing I like. Not the last thing I like, but this is the last thing I can kind of recollect, something that's notable. The ending and how it subverts expectations. If you've seen The Martian, then you know that the main character, Watley, yeah, gets back. He makes it back to Earth against all odds. And with the help of everyone on Earth who's special to him and all of these people, he makes it back. I for sure thought that was going to happen here, right? We're reinventing the wheel, but making the wheel just a little bit bigger. That's basically all of corporate life too. And that's a lot of storytelling. We're just reinventing the wheel, making it a little bit cooler, a little bit bigger, a little bit more dynamic. Huh. This is different. It's a space story where our hero doesn't make it home. Our protagonist, our MC, doesn't make it home. But he creates a new home. Those are all the things that I just know that I really liked in this story. I think I'm going to move on to the things I didn't really like in this story. And there's very few things I didn't like in this story. And it's not that I didn't like them. I was just like, okay, cool. We're going to start with the first thing. The first thing, and the thing that just pops up in my head, and it's the first thing I mentioned when I did that chapter review. I don't remember what chapter it is off the top of my head. The courtroom scene with Strat. That seemed a little forced. I genuinely hope that's not in the movie. We don't need that scene. There are other scenes that can prove that exact same thing, where she's a hard ass and she's the authority on the world and I don't care. You can cover all of that in other scenes. You don't need her being a boss, even in a room without Ryland in it. All the rest of the flashbacks, Ryland, it's his flashback, but somehow he's there, but doesn't make any... Anyway, we all get it. I don't think that's a great scene. It's okay. It's not necessary. We didn't need it. It seems shoehorned in. I also didn't much like, for maybe the same reasons, the final encounter with Strat. The encounter where he's in the jail cell and he's about to get taken, well, the jail cell, and he's about to get taken away to the spaceship, so they're going to put him in a coma. That final scene where she confronts him and tells him exactly what she's there for. I think I didn't like it the most, mainly because throughout the entirety of the story, all of the characters are trying to do and make the best decisions that they can possibly make at any given time, right? That's part of acceptance, the grief process. It's, hey, you're just making the best decision you could possibly make. When someone does something to you that you feel like you've been slighted, understand, they don't know any better. That's always the answer. And if they are doing something on purpose to slight you, you have every reason to continue to not talk to them, to continue to not be in their world. There are 7-whatever billion people on this planet. They're not that important if they chose to do that on purpose. And if they didn't choose to do that on purpose, something malicious toward you, then also let them be. They obviously have bigger problems. I digress. That final encounter seemed a little forced. We could have put that in other places. We could have put that in other things. I'm sincerely hoping that's not in the movie as well. However, I believe it will be in the movie because it's an actor's scene. It's a storytelling scene. Don't need it. Didn't need it in the book. I already knew what she was going to say. Not the history part and that famine and blah, blah, blah. Something else I didn't much like, and this is a very little thing, but there are times in the book where the exposition moves a little too quickly, right? We skip over 9 hours, 30 weeks, 10 days, not 30 weeks. We skip over quite a bit of time where things could have been happening to get to the next point. There's other ways to tell that in storytelling. I'm not a storyteller. I can't do any better. But it did feel like, oh, we're just skipping this part. Okay. There could have been something interesting, more grand, more thoughtful. But we did leave time for the courtroom scene, or the final encounter with Strat, or there was flirting that was happening between Ryland and one of the other doctors who initially didn't like, one of the other scientists, Avengers, the Strats Avengers, who didn't initially like him. And then there was flirting that was happening. I also didn't like that Andy Weir didn't expound on the relationships of the humans in the flashbacks. I mean, the book's already fairly long, but Ryland's feeling feelings for these people, and you're getting no reason why. There's no payoff. He cries when he jettisons the 2 other crew members out into space. At no point do you're just told he cares about them. That's it. Also, and this isn't a big thing for me because it kind of helps speed up this storytelling, but there are character tropes and stereotypes that are a little on the nose. Didn't need to be so on the nose. Once again, we can replace some of that on the nose things with other relationship building moments. The final thing that I didn't really like about this story is this story is written in a way where Ryland could be depicted as an unreliable narrator. He could be seeing Strat as this hard ass blah 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 blah, when really he might have had a crush on her, or he might not like women, or he might not like redheads, or we don't have any reason to believe that he is a reliable narrator, and we have no reason to believe that he's an unreliable narrator. We don't know when this story was written. We don't know the point of view. It could have been that he writes his story in chapter 30. He's writing his entire log of the Project Hail Mary project and where it started and where it ended. We don't know. It's just a story. So we don't know how reliable he is as a narrator, and that may unfortunately put people in a bad light and fortunately put people in a good light. For example, this is a great example. So the Russian engineer, right? He always commented about the booze. Oh, she always was drinking a beer, she was drinking vodka, whatever. Well, maybe she wasn't, right? We don't need that in there. We don't need necessarily that he thinks she's some sort of grandiose alcoholic. Those are just a few things. The unreliable narrator thing is something I was thinking about most of the time, in that how do we know that these interactions that he's describing and these people that he's describing, that his point of view is the point of view you should take as the reader, and not just, well, this is some dude who's a loner who doesn't know how to deal with people so much that he writes a paper at the beginning intentionally to devoid himself of the community that he maybe just doesn't want to be a part of again because they don't respect him as much as he'd like them to. We don't know. So the unreliable narrator, the reliable narrator, I wish we either knew he was a reliable narrator for sure, and there was some sort of evidence to say, yes, this is how these people are, based on the relationships of the other people with them, or we knew he was an unreliable narrator, and there was some moments where Ryland maybe wasn't who we think he is, right? Because in the beginning, we think he's altruistic and good, except he's a little bit of, he has a weaker constitution for things and people. And he continues that throughout. But we people also know those kinds of people. And they may have separate and different interpretations of who people are as they are presented, right? And there's so much assumed stereotype. I don't like using that word right here because it's not correct, but there's so much assumed stereotype that you just fill your head with that stereotype, and it's like, well, maybe she's not a drunk Russian engineer, maybe this woman who has the connections at CERN, maybe she's not some arrogant scientist who hates him because he wrote one paper that disagreed with everyone. Maybe she's just a regular scientist who's thoughtful and doesn't agree with him, and he's just taking it poorly because he's kind of a child about it. We don't know. So I digress. That's not a big concern because it's still so well written that only I and maybe a few of my friends would be like, yeah, I wish we could be more thoughtful about, are these reliable narrators? Are these unreliable narrators? We don't know. Now we'll jump onto my sequel idea. I've got 2 sequel ideas, essentially. One is more like in the vein of The Martian. It's more in the vein of this book. It is Rocky takes Ryland's remains back to Earth, and they go on this trekking journey, and through their journey, they unintentionally cause another seeding event of a star on their journey, and Earth has to meet them halfway in order to help them fix it. I think that would be cool. The more outlandish and crazy story is it involves another race of aliens or a group of aliens that have different technology that do some other sense of a way of communicating, talking, speaking, and maybe they're telepathic. Humans and Iridians can't really understand what they're trying to do until they unlock something in their own brain. Maybe we clone a younger Ryland and we put Ryland's brain into a younger Ryland's body. I think that would be cool. But yeah, they tease the alien thing at the very end of the book. Like, someone seeded the astrophage, someone seeded these planets, probably. Who did that? Who was this other race that's older or younger? Yeah, having some sort of alien story where both the Iridians and the Earthlings have some sort of conflict with them, or they have a communication with them, or maybe they're the higher evolution of the astrophage or Talmeba or something. They're another version of that they communicate differently. Maybe that. I don't know. But I like the idea of a little bit more conflict. There's a lot of character in both The Martian and Project Hail Mary. So if we wanted to add more character, I like the idea of meeting Adrian, of meeting Rocky's mate. I like the idea of having this conversation. I like the idea of introducing cloning into the story and introducing aliens, another race of alien. I think that would be cool. That would be really, really super cool. I think it would be interesting for them to have this alien race to have a reason to dim the suns. Like, why are you dimming the suns? Why did you start this whole process? And the last thing I'll mention is a book that reminded me of this book. And it doesn't remind me of this book because it's so similar. Well, it's so similar in type. It's not science fiction. It's just fiction, right? And it's This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you've ever read This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald, it's a book of its time. It was written in the early 1900s. And it is about a young man who grows up at the time and goes through the world in a way that he thinks he should. And as he continues to go through the world changes and it changes him, and then he becomes someone new. And the way it ends is pretty interesting. It speaks to the narrative going on right now in our world and our socio-political climate, as this was exactly a century ago when this book came out. And the ending, they're like, oh, this is a taboo idea for them a century ago. And became the most famous book in the world. It led to the Fitzgeralds becoming like the Kardashians of their time. Super interesting. So, This Side of Paradise, if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into classics, it's got a similar vibe to it. It's pretty well written. Obviously, it made F. Scott Fitzgerald famous at the time, and it's prior to The Great Gatsby. So, that's a cool book. We're gonna jump into the next book next week. We'll make an announcement, I'm sure. And we'll see you tomorrow when William and I will take a look at the trailer, his first time look, my second time look, although I haven't seen it since I've read the book. So I'm excited to see that with you all. And after that, we'll jump into something new. So I appreciate your time. If you stayed this long, please like and subscribe and share. But that'll be it for me. So till next time, later, taters.